My brother's truck was already in the driveway when I pulled up. I sat in my car for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at it. That dark green Ford F-150 with the cracked side mirror he'd never bothered to fix. I hadn't told anyone I was coming today. I hadn't told my parents. I hadn't told my brother. I hadn't told anyone. That was the whole point. It was supposed to be a surprise. So why was his truck there? I got out of the car. The property was everything I had imagined when I first drove out here 18 months ago. A 2-acre lot on the eastern shore of Muskoka, about 2 hours north of Toronto, with 140 feet of waterfront and a stand of white birch trees along the south edge that turned gold every October. I had found it on a Friday night, sent the listing to no one, and by Monday morning I had made an offer. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my brother. I paid the deposit myself from savings I had been building for 6 years. And I told myself that if this fell through, I would find something else, and I would keep looking until I found the right place. This was the right place. The cottage had taken 14 months to complete. I worked with a contractor out of Gravenhurst, a woman named Patricia, who had been building on lake properties for over 2 decades, and who understood exactly what I wanted, something that felt like it had always been there, like the land had grown it. Board and batten siding painted a deep forest green, a covered porch that wrapped around the front and one side, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an open kitchen with a long island where my mother could bake and talk at the same time, a dock my father could fish off every morning, radiant floor heating because I knew my mother's knees ached in winter, a propane backup generator because I knew my father would worry about power outages. I thought about the two of them in every single decision I made, right down to the lever-style door handles because my mother's arthritis had been getting worse. The total came to $285,000. The land, the build, the furnishings, the dock, the generator, the landscaping, the first year of property taxes. I paid for all of it. My name was on every invoice. I financed nothing. It was the most significant thing I had ever done with money I had earned, and I had never once considered asking anyone to share the cost, because this wasn't an investment. This was a gift. My parents had been married for 45 years. My father had worked as a millwright at a manufacturing plant in Brampton for 31 of those years before the plant closed, and he took early retirement with a pension that covered the basics but not much else. My mother had run a home daycare for 20 years. They had raised 2 children in a semi-detached house in Mississauga, taken us on camping trips every summer because hotels were too expensive, bought secondhand winter coats, packed lunches, made everything stretch. They had never complained once. Not once. When I started doing well in my career, I started paying their phone bill, then their car insurance, then helping with the hydro when rates went up. It was never enough. I always felt like it was never enough. So when I decided I wanted to do something that would actually matter, something permanent, something they could have and hold and live inside of, I started saving with a specific number in mind. And 18 months later, I was standing in the driveway of a cottage on Muskoka with my brother's cracked mirror truck parked where I had planned to park my own car, and something in my chest had gone very quiet and very still. I walked up the porch steps and opened the front door. My brother was standing in the kitchen. His girlfriend was sitting at the island, my mother's island, the one I had specifically chosen for its length, with her laptop open in front of her. My father was in the corner chair by the window, the one I had placed there because it faced the water, and his hands were folded in his lap in the way they fold when he doesn't know what to say. My mother was standing near the hallway with her arms crossed, not tightly, but the way she crosses them when she is trying to hold herself together. My brother turned around when I came in. "Hey," he said, not surprised, not apologetic, just hey, I said. "What's going on?" We were just talking about the place. He gestured around like he was giving a tour of somewhere that belonged to him. "It's a great property, really great. We were thinking, since it's in Mom and Dad's name, it makes sense for the whole family to have access. We actually found a property manager up in Huntsville. Rental income on a place like this could be $8,000, maybe $10,000 a month in peak season." I looked at my father. He didn't look at me. He looked at the water. "You found a property manager," I said. "It's smart," my brother said. "It's a financial asset. Why let it sit empty? Mom and Dad can still use it off-season. You listed it." He paused, just for a second, but I saw it. We reached out to a few people. His girlfriend said from the island, not looking up from her laptop, just to see what the numbers looked like. I want to tell you what it felt like to stand there in that moment, in the kitchen I had designed, looking at my father in the chair I had chosen for him, listening to my brother explain how he had already begun to monetize something I had spent 6 years building toward. I want to tell you there was anger, and there was, eventually. But the first thing I felt was not anger. The first thing I felt was a kind of grief that had no name for it, because it wasn't just about the cottage. It was about realizing that something I had poured every careful, quiet intention into had been looked at by someone who loved me and seen only as a number. My brother was not a bad person, in the way that shows up in headlines. He was not cruel. He was just someone who had, his entire life, looked at every situation through a single lens. What's the angle here? What's the return? How do we make this work for us? And it had never occurred to him to wonder whether some things weren't supposed to work that way. He was 40 years old. He sold commercial real estate in the GTA, and he was good at it. He had a condo in Etobicoke and a rental property in Hamilton, and he talked about equity at Christmas dinner. I didn't resent any of that. What I resented, standing in that kitchen, was the speed of it. My parents had been given the keys 4 days ago. 4 days. And he had already found a property manager in Huntsville. The deed is in their names, he said again, as if that settled it. As if that was an argument. So as a family, we should all be part of the decision-making about what to do with it. I put my bag down on the floor. Can you give me a minute with Mom and Dad? I said. His girlfriend looked up for the first time. My brother looked at me the way he had looked at me our entire lives when he thought I was about to make his life difficult. Then he nodded slowly, and they both went out onto the porch. I sat down across from my father. My mother came and stood beside him. Did you know he was coming up here? I asked. My father shook his head. He called yesterday. Said he wanted to see the place. We thought it would be nice. We didn't know he was going to. He stopped. His hands tightened in his lap. Your mother and I don't want to rent it out. We told him that, my mother said. He said it was just something to consider. I nodded. I took a breath. Then I reached into my bag. I need to explain something. When I transferred the deed into my parents' names, I did it through an irrevocable family trust. This was not an accident. I had spent 3 months before the transfer working with a real estate lawyer in Toronto, a woman my accountant had recommended, who specialized in exactly this kind of structure. The trust named my parents as the life tenants, meaning they had full legal right to use, occupy, and enjoy the property for the rest of their lives. It also named me as the sole trustee and the sole remainderman, meaning that all decisions about the property rental, sale, renovation, anything required my written approval as trustee. Without my signature, nothing could be listed, nothing could be rented, nothing could be changed. My parents could not sell it even if they wanted to. And if anything happened to them, the property would transfer directly to me, bypassing the estate entirely, which meant it could not be contested, distributed, or divided among other family members under the terms of their will. I had set up automatic property tax payments for 12 years through a trust account. I had prepaid the annual maintenance contract with a local caretaking company. I had done all of this quietly, methodically, over 18 months, not because I thought my brother would do what he did, but because I was a careful person, and I had a lawyer who asked the right questions, and one of those questions was, is there anyone in your family who might have a different interpretation of this gift than you intend? And I had thought about that for a long time before I answered. I spread the documents out on the island. The trust agreement, the deed, the trustee designation, the schedule of prepaid taxes, the caretaking contract. I laid them out in order, the way my lawyer had shown me, so the structure was clear even to someone who didn't know what they were looking at. My brother had come back in from the porch at some point. I hadn't asked him to, but I hadn't told him not to. He stood at the edge of the kitchen and watched me lay the papers down. This property is held in a family trust, I said. Mom and Dad are the life tenants. That means they live here. They use it. That's what it's for. I looked up. I'm the trustee. Any decision about this property, renting it, listing it, changing the caretaking arrangement, anything requires my written authorization. That hasn't been given and it won't be given. My brother was quiet. The property manager your contact reached out to, I said. If any agreement was made, it was made without legal authority. If they were told otherwise, that's something you'll want to correct. I didn't sign anything, he said. Good. His girlfriend had her arms folded. She was looking at the papers on the island with an expression I recognized, not anger, but recalculation. She was a smart person. She could see what she was looking at. You set this up before you even transferred the deed, my brother said. It wasn't a question. Yes. You did all this, and you didn't say anything to me. I thought about how to answer that. I thought about all the ways I could have framed it. I wanted to protect the gift. I was being careful. It was a legal formality. All of those things were true. But the truest thing was simpler, and I had promised myself a long time ago that I would say true things when the moment asked for them. I didn't say anything because it wasn't your decision, I said. I paid for this. I planned it. I chose it. It's for them. That's the whole story. The room was very quiet. My brother looked at my father. My father was looking at the water again, but differently now. Not the tense, folded stillness from before. Something else. Something looser. My brother looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his keys from the counter. I hadn't even noticed he'd put them there, and he said, "I'll call you," which meant he wouldn't, not for a while, and he and his girlfriend walked out. I heard the porch door, then his truck starting, then the sound of gravel under his tires going down the drive, and then nothing. My mother sat down on the stool at the island. She looked at the papers. "You did all this before you showed us the house," she said. "Yes. You've been doing this for a year and a half." About that, she pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry, because my mother almost never cried, but her eyes had gone bright. "I didn't even know you were saving like that. I didn't want you to worry about it." My father got up from the chair by the window. He walked over slowly. The way he always moved now, he'd had a hip replacement 2 years ago, and he still favored one side, and he stood at the island and looked at the documents without touching them. Then he put his hand on my shoulder just for a moment, and he said, "Thank you." Just that, 2 words. The way my father said most of the important things. We stayed that evening. I had brought groceries in the car. I'd packed a cooler before I left Toronto because I'd planned to stay the night and cook dinner for them. My mother made tea, and I unpacked the food, and we moved around the kitchen together the way we always had. And it felt normal in a way I hadn't expected. Or maybe I had expected it, and that was the point. That was what it was supposed to feel like. After dinner, my father went out to the dock. I watched him through the window above the kitchen sink while my mother and I cleaned up. He walked to the end of it slowly and stood there looking out at the water. The lake was still. The sun was coming down low and long across the surface, and he just stood there, not moving, for a long time. My mother came and stood beside me at the window. "He's been out there every evening since we arrived," she said. We watched him together. There is a thing about building something for people you love that nobody tells you, which is that the moment you feel it most is not the moment you hand them the key. It is not the moment they first see it or the moment they say thank you. It is a quieter moment than that. And it comes later when you are standing at a window doing dishes and you look out and you see them in the space you made for them, just existing, just being, and the place is holding them the way you meant for it to. That was the moment. My father stood at the end of the dock and looked at the light going down on the water. He was not thinking about rental income. He was not thinking about property values or peak season rates or what the equity looked like on a 2-acre Muskoka waterfront. He was not anywhere else. He was just there, in the place I had built for him watching the lake, and he had nowhere he needed to be. A boundary is not a wall. I want to say that clearly, because I know that what I did might look to some people like I was locking my family out, or being controlling, or being cold. I set up a trust not to keep anyone away from my parents, but to keep them safe in the place I gave them. The structure I built around this property was the same structure I built around the gift itself, careful, considered, made to last. I didn't want it to be undone by a conversation I wasn't in, or a signature someone else offered, or an assumption about what belonging to a family means. What it means to me is this. My parents worked for 45 years. They made every dollar stretch. They gave us everything they could, and they asked for nothing back. And now there is a place on the water where my father can stand at the end of a dock and watch the light change and not have to think about a single thing except that was always the plan. Nothing about that plan has changed.